content over everything.
Okay, let's have the first points, questions, discussions. What went wrong? I just posted why we lost. It's the same question. What went wrong? Firstly, we have to understand the background to this. Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader in 2015 as an outlier. He had been involved in political campaigns for decades without any significant influence inside the leadership of the party. The consequence of that is when he was elected by the new electoral structure that allowed members and supporters to vote, it reflected a deep-seated discontent at the way in which the party had been dragged to the right under Tony Blair. But it did not reflect a strong position for the left inside the Parliamentary Labour Party. The consequence of that was that throughout the period from 2015 until this election, the majority of Labour Party members of Parliament were hostile to Jeremy Corbyn and the project that he represented. The consequence of that was that the Corbyn team, a group of around 20 or 30 people initially, they attempted to try and maintain the unity of the parliamentary party. I believe that was a mistake, that they should have gone for the reselection of MPs right back in 2015 or 2016 or 2017. At the very least, when the second attempt was made, or better said, when the second leadership election happened, after the Brexit referendum, Jeremy Corbyn could have used that authority to sweep away the right wing of the Labour Party inside the Parliamentary Party. But he did not do so. So that is a criticism that I have got as to Jeremy Corbyn's actions.
He wasn't authoritarian enough.
He wasn't tough enough in asserting the will of the membership towards changing the balance of forces inside the Labour Party.
There was no majority for forced reselection.
I think there was a majority. But Jeremy
That's
Corbyn,
why the motion was withdrawn during the Labour Party conference.
They withdrew it. Nevertheless, no matter what the specific dynamics were, I don't think that was there, but no matter what they were.
That's exactly what happened.
The issue is this.
There was a draft.
I believe
but it was withdrawn
that leadership withdrawn. So leadership means taking a stance where you put your point of view, regardless of what the other side thinks. You defend your point of view in a determined fashion, regardless of what the other side thinks.
So that would have made the Labour Party more electable if it totally Corbyn.
I think yes.
I don't think so.
Now, second thing is, when earlier this year, the campaign around a so-called people's vote took off more and more momentum, unfortunately, sections of the Labour Party, both particularly influential, was a group called Another Europe is Possible, which is a people's vote campaign, which I believe incorrectly pressured the Labour Party to adopt a position whereby they would call for a second referendum. I argued at the time, and up until the election began this year, that they were wrong to call for a second referendum.
It's too late then.
I argued all along.
Too late.
Well, I argued this.
Right.
Now,
but arguing until the election started, you're too late.
Sorry?
You're too late. The argument had been had within the Labour Party and the decision had been taken.
Well,
you're telling us you're argued right up to the start of the election.
I said what I said. I was asked a question. I'm not asked the question, what happened by some strange objective measurement of a universal political analyst. I'm being asked a question as me. What do I think went wrong? And you can judge whether you think my analysis is correct or not. Obviously, you're going to disagree. You come from a different faction of the Labour Party.
I
You were
correctly predicted, as you well know, that Jeremy Corbyn would never be Prime Minister on the day that he was elected.
Well, you know, that's neither here nor there.
It's not.
Because at the last election, they came pretty close. So the argument is spurious.
Yeah.
Obviously, it
But
was
there are no
possible.
second
Obviously,
prizes
it
in
was
politics.
possible if Labour had increased its share of the vote from 2017. Jeremy Corbyn would be Prime Minister. So that's no real revelation of prophetic insight. I'm trying to explain some insights that I have as someone involved in the movement from my own analysis and background as to why we lost. The two issues. The third issue.
No, that's not just why
The
he
third
lost.
issue.
It's why the Labour
The gentleman
movement
here. The gentleman
lost
here.
the worst in the worst way since the 1930s.
Well, firstly, don't forget, 1935 was the last time we received a vote share as low as this. True. But 1945 was when we got the largest vote share and carried out the biggest change. So, my son wrote to me earlier on. He said to me, "What do you think will happen?" He lives in Mexico at the moment. And I said, well, 5 or 10 years is where we've gone to. We've gone down 5 or 10 years, that's it.
Congratulations with the elections, Heiko.
Thank you very much.
Very great victory.
I'm glad you found something to say. I noticed you earlier on and then you disappeared again. So thank you very much for that. I don't particularly, but c'est la vie. C'est la vie. Now,
Well, at least our country
Now-
doesn't have a comedian as president. He's Ukrainian.
oh, right, I see. Now, it is perfectly true that decisiveness is what Jeremy Corbyn appeared to lack.
It's a different skill set.
The two reasons for that is as follows. One, he tolerated too many MPs constantly criticising him over false allegations of anti-Semitism. That campaign,
They're not false.
which was initiated and no doubt financed,
These
there
are not false
was a very good
accusations.
article.
The party has now called in
So you
the
say.
human rights
No,
organisation
the party
to
didn't
investigate
call it.
They're not
The
false.
party didn't call
They're
it
not
in.
false.
The party didn't call it in. The allegations I'll state quite openly and clearly. The allegations of anti-Semitism are a total and absolute lie and always
Well,
were.
We'll see.
And the truth that there was an article published in a Israeli website, I think it's called Haaretz.com. Very good article. They said, let's be clear. It's an Israeli newspaper and journal. They said, let's be clear. A contract was taken out on Jeremy Corbyn years ago.
A contract.
Yes, a contract. A contract to slander him
What, the
and bring
mafia?
him down
Mafia?
on wild and false allegations of anti-Semitism.
Mafia.
And those allegations were repeated incessantly.
No, what-
Who's that guy at Speaker's Corner? The guy who attacked Piers a few months ago. The guy with a ginger beard.
So why did Corbyn?
Even on the last day.
Why did Corbyn say there is a problem of anti-Semitism in the
Because
party?
Corbyn wrongly thought he would be able to put the issue to bed by capitulating to some degree to these people. He was wrong.
Capitulating.
The Israel lobby is powerful. It's
Capitulating.
defending
Oh, another
one of the most
anti-Semitic
reactionary states on earth. And their supporters are well organised, well financed and well connected. And they have used the last 4 years to constantly sabotage and attack Jeremy
More
Corbyn.
anti-Semitism.
Or even though everybody knows and the statistical data proves that there is a far higher level of anti-Semitism inside the Conservative Party than in the Labour Party.
where's the evidence
It's not
for that?
there's no anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. There are paedophiles in the Labour Party. There are murderers in the Labour Party.
Really?
There are rapists in
Who
the
are the
Labour Party.
murderers? Who are the murderers?
Because we've
No,
got
who are the murderers?
500,000 members. We have 500,000 members. So of course we reflect all the contradictions in society. And the internet
listened to what I
can
just
be
said.
used to amplify distorted ideas.
All right, so you
And
make
yes,
up- you make
if
up
someone
your own
posts
mind.
something,
You have a
for example, the case in point.
What do you think about that, man?
The
What
case
the
in
fuck are you
point.
bringing up Hitler when you're talking about Tony Blair for? Fucking Hitler.
Please.
Was he tried?
Fucking Hitler.
One case in point.
Fuck off with Hitler.
You may remember there was a mural posted on the wall by someone, which had a picture of white guys with quite large noses. Hang on. White guys with quite big noses sitting around a table. It certainly could be interpreted as anti-Semitic.
It is anti-Semitic.
When Jeremy Corbyn saw it, he didn't spot that. Why should he spot every detail of every picture? And then suddenly,
Well, he shouldn't
Jeremy
give an opinion on it
Corbyn,
then. He
Jeremy
should
Corbyn's anti-Semitic.
before he
Jeremy
gives his
Corbyn.
opinion.
The truth is, when people say the working class in the north of England abandoned Labour, there is some truth in it. But there is also truth in this, that those people who abandoned Labour during this election to vote for Johnson or the Brexit Party, most of those working class people, if you ask them what they think about the allegations of anti-Semitism and so on, they will turn round. They will use
That's an
many of
absurd
them.
statement. Have you asked them?
What have I
you
said?
Have you
What have
got
I
any
said?
data?
You don't
Have you
even know what
got
I've
any
said.
data showing that people on the doorstep, MPs who went out 8 hours a day, find that to be the case?
Found
You're
what
just
to be
making
the
this
case?
up.
Found what? I haven't finished my sentence yet.
You're trying to say that anti-Semitism isn't real and that the working
On the
class people
contrary.
wouldn't. Oh, so it is real.
So what did I say?
It is real.
What did I
And
say?
So what you're saying is
I didn't finish my sentence.
Yes, you
before
did.
You attacked
Yes,
me.
you did.
So
You're
what
trying,
was I going to say?
You're trying to make a generalisation about working class people in the north that they wouldn't find the allegations of anti-Semitism real. Isn't that what you're going to say?
Well, that is what I'm going to say.
No,
yes.
well, you have no data.
They will
You
think.
have no data.
Well, I have my opinion. I'm giving you my opinion.
Yeah, what's it based
If you
on?
want, if you
What's
want
it based on?
Well, my friend, we've had years of data spewed out by the ruling class. The truth of the matter is, the data doesn't tell you the truth. The key element is this.
Yeah,
If
neither
you
does
want-
Karl Marx.
Sorry?
Neither does Karl Marx tell you the truth.
Well, I mean, neither here nor there, to be honest.
It's not neither here nor there.
I believe that in working class communities that shifted their vote towards the Tories, they couldn't give a shit about the allegations of anti-Semitism.
Really? But you have no evidence
Nor
of this
do
whatsoever.
I believe I said. I believe.
But it's
subjective
based on
view.
nothing at all. I believe I
Subjective
can fly.
view.
There you are.
Well, you can't fly.
Well, but you haven't got any data, so there's an equivalence in the statements.
No, there's not an equivalence in the statement. One statement. When I say, I
you're gonna have to listen to me
believe,
as well.
I am making an entirely subjective statement.
Right.
That I believe
Based on
is
nothing at
also
all.
based on fact, on my knowledge from
Look,
speaking.
you're not even a member of the
from-
working classes.
From speaking.
You've never lived
at
in the north of
Speaker's
England. Have you
Corner.
ever lived in northern England? Have you ever lived there?
Oh, shut up.
I lived
Is
in a
this
mining
relevant?
village. I lived in a mining village, and I
Is
worked for
this
the National
relevant?
Health Service. You're just a middle
So
class
you
London
believe-
wanker Marxist. Is
So
what
you
are.
believe is
Get
what
out
you're
of our
saying.
party.
I'm saying
Get
I
out
believe.
of our party.
Now,
take momentum with
Now
you.
I know there are a lot
Get
of
out.
people who will use the
Let's have the
same
Labour
type of
Party back.
slanders over the next few weeks when an election campaign in the Labour Party
Get a
begins.
lot of you out.
This type of
All
argument will
3 quid
start.
members, get out.
What they're arguing is they want to return the Labour Party to a
To
safe
winning elections.
Blairite
To winning
type
elections.
election
No,
winning
winning
machine.
election.
So you say,
Winning
but
elections.
ask yourself this:
We've lost 4 elections.
All-
How many do you want to lose?
all those people, all of the people who attacked the Labour leadership and left the Labour Party
leadership.
to try and
He was
form
leader in
a new
name
party,
only.
claiming that people can no longer tolerate the left-wing shift in the Labour Party, just as a camera, mind you. All those people lost their seats this election. Every single one of them. So for them to argue, as James here is doing, as Tony Blair is, you were the type people who were arguing, yes, pivot to Remain, yes, Remain is the only issue. I argued against that. I said we should not abandon the position of implementing the referendum. Unfortunately, his point of view conquered. The liberal left point of view that says, oh, and this is what I was talking about the northern working class. They seem to think, these liberal lefties seem to think that the working class is obsessed by every single petty discussion about Semitism, anti-Semitism, about how polite or impolite you are.
Well, they're not obsessed with the works of Karl Marx, that's for certain.
When they interviewed the workers in the north of England and they discussed with them, they often met people, Barnsley and so on. They went up to them and said, oh, are you voting? They go, no, I'm not voting for Corbyn. And then they said, oh, what do you do? He said, I'm retired. It says, what do you do? A miner. So that's why he brings up mining. The mining industry was decimated in the 1980s. After the 1980s, most of those communities in the Red Wall that voted against the Labour Party this time were decimated economically. They haven't had significant investment. And so about 20%, there's a study, statistics, my friend, in the Financial Times this morning, about 20% of the workforce in those areas are blue-collar, unskilled jobs. So is that the working class, or could anybody do those jobs? In London, most of those jobs are done by immigrant labour. In the areas that voted and shifted their vote from Labour to the Tories, most of those jobs are still done by working class people of white English descent. And the consequence of that is that it is not really true to say that those people represent, in inverted commas, the working class. London is working class. Manchester is working class. Liverpool is working class. The working class is changing because of the technical composition of the labour process. And these places, it is perfectly true, have been left behind. And it is also true that Labour needs not just to campaign in an election, Labour needs to campaign. Let me give you an example. Those who know, I've been campaigning on housing rights and gone to court on housing rights over the last years. Not squatters' rights, housing rights. On Friday morning, I went to bed early on Thursday night because Friday morning I had a court case in the Royal Courts of Justice where I was defending someone facing eviction. The judge should have given an adjournment in order to hear the full details. But instead of this, confident after the Tory victory the night before, the judge sat there 15 minutes. He decided a complicated case involving hundreds of pages of documents which he had not even read, stamps his authority. Yes, the court case is dealt with. So now we've got to launch an appeal. Working people, this is what Labour must do. There's an old phrase: educate, organise, agitate. That is what the Labour movement must do. Get out from this illusion of the discussion. Not what's left of it. We have 500,000 members. I assure you, during this election, unlike Tony Blair's years, I don't know where you live. I don't know where you live. But this man can confirm he was campaigning. And everywhere you went, it was only Labour Party people knocking on doors. One after another. We have a mass base. But that is what the Labour movement is built on. Not built on piffle discussions on television, nor built on social media. Let me point something about that out first of all.
The Labour Party spent more on social media than the Tories.
Now let me explain about social media. Many on the left thought.
It's a fact. It's a checkable fact.
Many on the left believed.
It's a checkable fact. Get your smartphone out.
Many on the left believed that we would be able to win by penetrating through social media to the wider population. But what they didn't realise is the following. Social media is no longer an instrument of social change. Social media is based on artificial intelligence algorithms that, contrary to what it did a few years ago, now act to isolate people from one another.
So have you closed your Facebook account yet?
I will be doing so.
Right, okay.
However,
I don't use social media. I'm well
I
ahead
didn't
of you
say
on that.
I didn't use it,
No,
nor did I say before that I would close it down. I merely pointed out the facts that artificial intelligence algorithms now dominate social media to the extent that it isolates people from one group from another. So rather than posting something that gets sent out to people who might be of a different point of view and be able to win them over, social media now serves merely to replicate your own circle and to seal you off from wider circles. I have been a vociferous advocate of returning to the grassroots mobilization in order to defend the rights of the people. I assure you, in campaigning on housing rights for the last 5 years, I know directly from experience. Most people in this country haven't got a clue about their rights. And that's what the labour movement needs to act on. They need to inform them. They need to educate them. They need to defend them. You say they don't care. I give you a case in point. There was a building in Canary Wharf where they packed in 60 people into the building illegally and rented it out to them. Companies which are officially, they declare themselves, we're guardian, protectors of property. They are slum landlords, destroying housing rights. And so I organise to defend the people there. But only a minority of them are prepared to act. But they are prepared to act when you inform them, when you explain to them, when you educate, and when it affects their own interests. Then, you listen to what I said, when it affects their own interests, then people do turn around and say, maybe you're right, maybe I'll act with you. We only need a small proportion of the British population to get up off their knees, to stand upright, to defend their own rights, the rights of their friends, their neighbours, their community. That means fighting for those rights. It means looking at the law. It means speaking to others. It means organising. It means explaining. It means understanding the real power relations in society. And when you begin to mean that step, the first protest you ever join, the first court case you ever fight, the first understanding you have about how you can fight against the system using their own laws, defending your own rights, then it elevates a person to an upright posture and they can stand up and say, I am a human being with rights and with the right and ability to fight for my rights. That is how.
Hong Kong protesters, aren't you? You call them criminals. You call them violent. You call them smashing up things.
Now, that does not mean, you are right, and I'll explain why. The most peaceful. My friend, you obviously haven't watched what's going on in Hong Kong.
I was in Chung Kwan O Hospital, looking out the window. 100,000
What is your objection?
When I say, I will deal a little bit with Hong Kong, but I'm not spending my time on that. That's not the main issue. If you want to defend the Hong Kongers' rights, demand they get British passports. Demand that. Demand that. Because the problems in Hong Kong come from British rule, not Chinese rule.
Come on, seriously.
They come from British rule.
Come on, seriously.
How many? My friend, what do people want in Hong Kong?
They want freedoms. They don't want.
What do you mean freedoms?
Well,
The right to vote.
Yes.
So how long was Britain in Hong Kong?
So why are you making that
How
comparison?
long was Britain in
Why are
Hong
you
Kong?
even making that comparison?
Because Britain never granted them the right to
Yeah, they're
vote.
not asking it from Britain. They're asking it from the country they're in now, which is China.
No, they're asking it in Hong Kong.
Yeah, well,
They have the right to vote in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
They just
haven't
had
now.
elections.
But in
It's not a democratic
2047, that's going to
What
go.
is a democratic election?
I don't
2047,
agree with
can
him
what
living a
change?
democracy. If you're a property, there's 4 property owners, multi-millionaires.
Exactly.
They have the
Where do they
vote.
come from?
The British,
Where do they
the
come from?
British
There you go. Hear
They
him?
came
My
from the
friend,
British.
listen. My friend.
Came from the
Hear what he
British.
said. 4 people effectively own Hong
No, I
Kong.
didn't say.
And they have the power in Hong Kong.
The powerful ones
Yes,
chose
and
the
where do they
government.
come from? He said
Yeah,
correctly, from the British.
Yeah,
The
okay.
British put them in power.
Right, so what's wrong with
That's
that?
why the people in Hong Kong are angry.
So what's wrong
Because
with
the Hong Kongers have shit housing.
No,
They are
it's not
poorer
economical.
than the mainland
It's not
Chinese.
economical. It's
Much
not-
poorer
You see,
than the
this is
mainland
problem
Chinese.
with Marxism. This is the problem with Marxism. They always reduce everything to economics. It's not about
My friend,
economics. It's
isn't
not
it?
about money.
My
It's
friend.
not about money. The people who voted for Brexit, they knew they were going to be worse off once we leave the EU, and
Did they?
Yes, they
No,
did.
that's
Yes,
not
they
true.
On the
did.
contrary.
That's not
A large bunch of them did know it. They were aware of it.
So what
And
was
yet-
the scaremongering all about?
And yet
What
they
was
chose,
the scaremongering all about?
and yet they chose to leave because when you're a
That's
human
not
being,
correct. That's not
you cannot reduce the human being. This is my main contention with Marxism and
Well,
Karl
I
Marx.
think-
you cannot reduce a human being down to economics. You
Well,
just cannot.
ask yourself
Whereas
this.
other
then.
things-
Ask
other
yourself.
things in
I didn't
life-
say. I never said you can reduce, and nor does Marxism reduce a human being
Karl Marx
solely to economics. What we say is the following: the precondition and foundation for all life on Earth and all civilization is the mechanism by which we produce the wealth in society. That's what we say. And those who believe it's all about ideology are mistaken.
It's not all
I
about
assure you,
ideology, it's
if
not.
Brexit results in an economic catastrophe, I don't believe it will, but if it were to result in that, everybody will be screaming to join the European Union. Right?
Well,
Yes,
I
they would be
I
screaming to
disagree.
do that.
I would disagree.
On the I don't believe
you're-
it will. I
you're
don't
making a
believe it will
compromise.
result
You're
in
making a
catastrophe,
compromise.
and I said so all along. However, it is quite clear that those people, that the voting pattern in Britain, what was it? John Ashworth. Sorry, not John
The
Ashworth.
people who voted
Lord
for Brexit
Ashcroft.
were poor
Lord
already. They were
Ashcroft
poor already.
published a
They
poll
already had
yesterday.
money. They had
You may have
money.
seen it on the internet.
Arguments was that we will be fine after we vote for Brexit.
No, that's a lie. That's a lie.
Why was it £350, 300 million?
This is all propaganda. I know.
No, but that's
I'm
sometimes say
saying
the majority of people.
But in
believe
order to
that.
get the
People
vote,
think that-
Yeah, people
in
believe
order to get the vote,
People believe
they
that.
had to say,
A lot of them
you
were
will
employed.
be
that.
better
Fight that
off.
Yeah.
A lot of them-
Second answer to your question, which is this. Lord Ashcroft published a poll today, or yesterday, where he showed the age demographic and sex demographic of the election this time round. And the under 44s voted largest percentage for Labour. The 18 to 24s, 59% Labour in this election. So clearly there is an important demographic. What is that
Because they've
demographic?
been brainwashed at
What is that
university.
demographic?
They've been brainwashed
It
at
is not
university. Like my
university.
relatives.
It is because
That's why they vote Labour.
that demographic,
Yes.
the older demographic, those who experienced life before we joined the European Union, what do they remember? They remember the golden years
Yeah.
of British economy. And they remember there weren't so many foreigners. And they remember we had an empire.
Yeah.
And their parents had an empire. And therefore we are dealing, yes, with a fundamentally reactionary viewpoint, like this gentleman expresses, year in, year out, from another generation who believed
going to live
that
in
Britain.
China, by the way, because they haven't got knife crime in
Who
Hong
believed?
Kong. No knife crime in Hong
okay,
Kong.
that's another
You're
issue. It's another
multiracial.
issue. It's
London,
another issue.
knife crime everywhere.
It's another issue.
So you don't want to talk about
They
that, knife
believed
crime.
this idea that you might be able to return to the golden era of Britain. The fact, however, is, and this is where the economics comes in, the economic conditions in Britain do not allow us to return to this golden age of the 1970s
The white people have
or
been
60s,
replaced.
whereby
Physically
here you go.
replaced.
Here you go. But the fact of the matter is,
They've
in
replaced.
those towns that voted for the Tory party, that previously voted Labour, those are the towns with the least immigration.
Yeah.
The least
Exactly.
immigration.
That's a very good point.
It is a fear reflected by what this gentleman says here. Where are we going? How have we been undermined? And don't forget, these are the communities that had mining. These were the manufacturing base of Britain in the golden era after the Second World War. And the fact of the matter is, human psychology,
10 years of Tories, huh? And you still blame
5
the
or
ladies.
10. Human psychology is a conservative thing. A conservative thing. People only change their minds slowly and gradually most of the time. And then suddenly, an explosion of transformation in consciousness occurs.
Well, that's not
Let me
gonna
give you an
happen now.
example.
You'll be defeated
Let me give you
there
an example.
For the next generation.
Let me give you an example.
Labour's defeated for the next generation.
A few years ago, Emmanuel Macron got 60% of the vote in France, and he declared himself the new European leader. France En Marche swept the board, a completely new political party. Swept the board in France, destroying the old parties. And yet, 1 year of protest by yellow vest protesters, by the working class, and now we have a general strike in France. A general strike poses the fundamental question that we need to pose, not only in France, but worldwide. Who controls society?
We don't want Jeremy
Who
Corbyn
controls
controlling
society? And I don't mean one aspect of this or that element. I don't mean who controls Parliament or who controls a local council. I mean who has power in the everyday lives of working people, over housing, over education, and over the workplace itself, over what we do with our hands and our brains. And that is why I, as a Marxist, stood by Labour all my adult life. And I will stand by Labour, no matter who is elected leader. But I believe we have a movement which was developed around Jeremy Corbyn
I was a member of the
that
Labour
will
Party
protect
left 50
and
years
defend
ago because they've been
and
taking
advance
working class.
the interests of socialism and the ideas of socialism, regardless of the defeat we experienced this week. Organise, agitate, educate, and prepare for the future. The future is a world future for a socialist movement. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Lawyers work with a high-class law firm. I work with my hands in
I spoke with Jeremy on Monday, and Pierce was with us going around Imperial College. Yeah.
Tories won in Watford by 4,400.
We lost 150 in Kensington. We've done a bit more work. Salary, that's how it is.
And the Lib Dems split our vote.
I've seen they say that Labour lost only in terms of seats, but in terms of votes they got over the votes.
ContentCOE everything from your belly.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
No,
Listen.
joining the conversation late. You're joining the conversation late. I would say Rob is further right than fascism.
Yeah, so I noticed Ralph is someone who is infiltrated now in at least that so he's getting involved with all these guys. I've warned them that he is
Actual fascists in the UK.
Still with them.
You look at actual fascists, the National Front, BNP. If you look at actual fascists, the BNP and the like, they focus on Jews. I'm asking.
Yeah, because Jews are more powerful than the Muslims.
Go away.
I don't want to talk about that. Oh, right. Because you don't want to talk about Jewish
Here's a classic racist, yeah?
No. Look at Trump. Look at Trump. He's 100% Zionist. He's got the most strong